Hey everybody, Bryce Amir Hardy back in the building. I'm gonna have to put the Mister on it this time. Call me Mr. Bryce Amir Hardy because we doing big things. Matter of fact, call me Sir Bryce Amir Hardy. Because I'm old school. This is how we do it. We in Walla Walla, we locked down, but that don't mean that we locked up because we can still reach back to the streets. We can affect our communities. We doing it big in here, and y'all doing it big out there. Black Experience Program commences now. Chapter 7, Week 7, Modern Social Inequities. A lot of people don't really understand what that means, so we're going to have to break that down. This is the new Jim Crow. The war on drugs is the new Jim Crow. And you would think to yourself, well, what's Jim Crow, man? Well, look, we're going to dive into that, but first we got to talk about what the new Jim Crow is, then we're going to talk about the old Jim Crow, and then it all going to make sense. It's all going to wrap around. So it's a perfectly legal system that discriminates against criminals. And discrimination is on employment, housing, voting rights, equal opportunities, food stamps, and public benefits. A lot of that good stuff, man, like basic necessities of life, there's a lot of discrimination on them for majority people of color like myself, black people. We the people very strong, but the government is against us because they're able to discriminate against us legally. That being said, as a criminal, you lose a lot of rights, and arguably you have less respect than a black man living in Alabama at the height of Jim Crow. Remember, again, we talking about the new Jim Crow. That was the old Jim Crow, but we're going to get into the old Jim Crow once we talk about the new Jim Crow. All right, you hear me? Mass incarceration in the United States emerged as a comprehensive way to racially control a population of people. It's functioning similar to Jim Crow. See, the difference between the new Jim Crow and the old Jim Crow basically being said, the old Jim Crow, there were rules, laws, and regulations that affected us black people as a whole. You couldn't get on the bus and sit in the front when there was white people. You had to go sit in the back. You couldn't get a promotion at work. You had to work the worst of the jobs for the most amount of time, for the least amount of wages. You could only live in a certain area. There were redlining. All type of crazy stuff was going on. Now, the new Jim Crow, after the old Jim Crow laws have been abolished, we should say, makes it a crime to be a criminal. Yeah, I'm going to say it one more time for you. It becomes a crime to be a criminal. So once you get convicted of a crime and you do your time, so you serve your debt to society, you're stigmatized for the rest of your life. You lose your rights to vote. In some states, you can't even vote ever again. You lose your rights to hold a firearm. You can't never hold a firearm again in some states. And federally, once you have a felony, you're always a felon. You won't be able to get that expunged off your record. That's the crazy part, man. What I used to think, and I thought my teacher had told me when I was in about second grade, first grade, third grade, somewhere around there, they told me if you're a felon, you can't be a president. Well, guess what? Donald Trump is a felon, and he's the president. So I don't know where they're teaching that at, but they shouldn't be teaching that in schools. So I like to believe that felons can do anything they want to do. That doesn't mean the system isn't set up against them. See, we got to be able to stand strong together or fall divided. The old Jim Crow was just a caste system, man. It made black people like this on this bottom while white people were out here. And that's crazy because last time I checked, alhamdulillah, Allah created every man equal. God created all men equal. Man is man. Woman is woman. Kids are kids. But we're all human. They didn't create a man and a lesser man. That's not how things work. They didn't create a lion and a lesser lion. That's not how things work. There's only one type of lion. One lion. There might be different types of, different breeds of it and everything like that, but there's only one lion at the heart of the situation. Let's be straight up. There's only one human at the heart of the situation, and that's us, man. We got to be strong together or fall divided. At the end of the day, the 13th Amendment made it constitutional for criminals to be enslaved, and being black became a crime. Being a criminal meant being locked up, and being locked up That more money for the government. And this is capitalism at its finest. If they ain't getting paid, then they don't care nothing about it. Man, prison labor equals economic wealth. Yeah, I said it again. Bob Barker, I'm talking to you. Maybe you might roll over in your grave, but I don't care at this point in time. You're still making these Bob Barker clothing that we still be wearing in here, and this is crazy. Now, the black people in America, there's only 6.5% of the U.S. population, but it's crazy because we make up 40% of the U.S. prison population. How is that? We're overpopulated in the prison. They got us not out there on the street, but they got us all up in here in the prison. And the likelihood of imprisonment for a black man is 1 in 3. That means since my mom had 3 children, that I was a statistic because I was one of the children that went to prison. That's crazy. Just think about it. It was set up for failure from the beginning. Now, I'm not saying that it was my destiny to go to prison. Don't get me wrong. I could have made the right choices, but I did become a statistic. And that's this sad scenario that we're going through right now, brothers and sisters. Don't become a statistic, please. Y'all be in here with me, and we'll be over here trying to make something happen from the prison. Not like we can't, but why we got to do that when we could be out there doing it big? Washington, D.C. is estimated that 3 out of 4 young black men are expected to serve time in prison. And this is cited in the D.C. Department of Corrections for the year of 2000. Whites, particularly white youth, are more likely to engage in drug crime than people of color. The U.S. Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs cited the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. In some states, black men have been admitted to prison on drug charges at rates 20 to 50 times greater than those of white men. Man, that's crazy, right? Because of white men are more likely to commit drug crimes and do commit drug crimes more than black men, but black men are locked up at a higher rate than the white men. What does that tell you? That they just ain't getting caught? Okay. As many as 80% of African American men have criminal records. And that's the Chicago Urban League Department of Research and Planning. Man, this mass incarceration stuff is just used for social control, let's be honest. They don't want us out there doing whatever we want to do. They put us in prison, they make a law, it goes into effect, boom. Now you're cracked off. Mass incarceration is not only a reference to the criminal justice system, but also the larger web of laws, rules, policies, and customs that control what criminals in and out of prison do. A huge percent of the black population lack the opportunity to attend poor schools and are plagued by poverty. If that wasn't said so right, I wouldn't agree, but it was. Man. The lasting effects of the social inequities is racial profiling, implicit racism, and systematic biases. Now, this country of the United States has racism embedded in it, into the religion, into the foundation. So the only way for us to really come about is by revolutionizing the system of how people are treated. And it starts with us. It really starts with us. If we can't make that change, then no one will. They ain't gonna make the change for us. We got to get people to start apologizing. We got to get people to start making reparations, man. What happened to us, man, ain't nothing never happened to nobody else. So the bibliography that I recommend, this is a great book. It's a great sister. She's doing great work. Shout out to her, Michelle A. Alexander. A lot of sisters don't get credit for the work they do, but, this sister's doing real big things. The book is called The New Jim Crow. I recommend it to all of you guys, and I appreciate your time. Once again, like, subscribe, comment, tell me how you're feeling. Shoot your phone number. I'll get back to you. Shoot your Instagram. We'll DM you. We're going to get to whatever you get to, whatever you involved in, we're going to get involved in. And keep it black first. Peace out, brothers.